Lindy.
And I'm Russell.
From Love, Create, Celebrate. Welcome back to our channel where we share all of our DIY and home renovation videos.
Today we're going to be sharing something a little bit different. We're going to be showing you how we built our Lego table.
We built this Lego table for our kids probably more than 6 months ago, and our kids honestly use it every single day.
Yeah, I mean it's been well loved.
If you're looking for a build that's easy to sell and going to get lots of use, this is the build for you. And
it's actually a fairly simple build. You only need like one piece of plywood, maybe a little bit of scrap if you want to trim the edges. Like it's simple, no fancy tools. You don't need the fancy tools to build it. It can be as simple or as complicated as you want.
And even if you don't plan on building a Lego table, I guarantee you're gonna learn some woodworking tips from Russell in this video because he's gonna be explaining everything he does to build this guy, and it's a pretty fun project.
So we actually partnered up with Build Something when we first did our Lego table about 6 months ago. And we have a whole build on their website on like step-by-step what tools you need, what products you need. And then there's also a free set of build plans that you can download, which will include a link in the description below.
Since this is one of Russell's build projects, we'll let him take it from here.
The first step for this project is to grab your free build plans from Build Something. We actually created a fairly detailed plan and instruction set that you can find on the Build Something website. We'll include a link for these plans in the description below. Once you have your plans, you can start by measuring and marking out all the pieces you need to cut out from your sheet of plywood. By doing all your measuring and marking out on your plywood ahead of time, you can kind of plan where you're doing your cuts to try and utilize the plywood as best you can. With everything marked out from the drawings, you can begin cutting. To cut out the pieces, I used an assortment of tools. I had my track saw, my table saw, and then a pole saw. You can use any combination of these. You could probably even use just one of them. I just found the best way to get the nicest cuts was kind of the combo of all those three. But you definitely could use like a jigsaw with a straight edge. You could use just a hand circular saw with a straight edge. And those will all give you the final look of the Lego table. It's all dependent on the tools you have available in your workshop. I used my track saw to complete the majority of the cuts just because I found it was the quickest to get the most accurate cut. And then because of the round blade, I had to finish off the cuts with my hand pole saw. When you're cutting your boards, you're always going to have offcuts. So in this scenario, my board was damaged on this side. So this is going to be waste anyway. So this I'm making sure is going to be on the side that's bad. And you can see on this side, that's a nice clean edge. So then I'll have nice clean edges on both sides of the piece. I'm doing my angle cuts. You can do them on the table saw, but the issue with the table saw is the blade's coming from under, so when you come to this corner, you have a hard time seeing where to end. The nice thing about the track saw is you come from the top, and the top of the blade is is at the beginning of your cut. So I just find that's easier. Can you do it with the table saw? Yes. I have a track saw, so I'm going to do it this way. You can also use a circ saw just by doing it by hand. This just gives you a really nice edge, and it really minimizes the tear out that you get. And I also leave, when I cut out the middle of this, the reason I did it this way is you can get 2 Lego tables out of 1 board of plywood. So I cut the middle out first, and I leave this on here because it gives me some area to attach my track to for my track saw. So again, that's an optional step. I've just built a couple of these, and I find this works the best for me. So, because I'm using a circular saw, I can only come up to the corner. It's not going to do a full cut. You have a bunch of different options to do this. I mean, you could flip it over and finish the majority of the cut. You could use a jigsaw. I tried a jigsaw with a fine blade, but I found out it's really easy to get tear out on the plywood along this edge. What I found worked best is a fine tooth pole saw, and you can just take it in and finish your cut with a fine tooth side. And then you just need to do a little bit of sanding, and then that gives you the most control and the cleanest finish once you're done. For just a simple hand tool, I use this a lot just to finish cuts. Like sometimes when you're cutting really thick stock with the table saw, you can do the majority of the cut, but you just can't quite finish it. You can use your pole saw to finish it. I mean, it's a bit of work, but it gets your big boards cut down. It's simple, it works really good, and it gives you a nice finish. So I've been extremely happy with just another little tool in the shop to help finish all those little details. And I'll include a link in the description below for this tool. So you can see here, like this is a nice clean cut. I can do a little bit of sanding here, but both sides are really nice and sharp. The plywood isn't damaged, so if you take your time with the pole saw and the track saw, you can get a really nice finish. The next step, once you have all your pieces cut out, is to add a top piece on top of all your side and end boards. To do this, I had some scrap pine that I used, and I just cut it to a thickness that was slightly wider than the plywood. I made the height and the width the same, so it was square. Once I had them all cut out, I attached these pieces to the tops of the side and end pieces of the Lego table using glue and my pin nailer. I add this top piece because I just find it's a lot nicer finish on top of the plywood cut ends, and I think it's also probably a little bit more durable with the kids leaning over the table. Once the glue dries on the pieces, you can get ready to cut it to the right width. To do this, I used my router table with a flush trim bit to cut the top piece to the same width as the plywood. If you don't have a router table, you could cut those pieces closer to the thickness of the plywood and then also sand it smooth. The next step is to prep the table for mitered edges. There's a couple ways you can do this, and I've done it a couple different ways because we built a couple of these tables. But the best way that I found is to use a 45-degree chamfer bit on my router table and cut the miter that way. You could also cut the miter using a track saw and setting the track saw to 45, or cut the miter with your table saw, setting your table saw blade at a 45. I just found to get the cleanest mitered edge is to use my router table with a 45-degree chamfer bit. The next step I do before assembly is to sand all the pieces. I find it significantly easier to sand the pieces when I can put them on a flat surface than to sand the piece once it's assembled. So I take the pieces and I put them on a workbench or a flat work area and give them a light sand on all the surfaces and make sure that there's no nicks or anything that need to be filled. For sanding, I work my way up to a 220 grit sandpaper, as I find this is a nice finish once you add the stain or varnish. With a light sand completed, you can begin assembly. So to assemble, again, there's a bunch of different ways you can go about this. There's a bunch of different clamps you can use to help hold it. Again, I built a couple of these. I've tried a couple different methods, and what I find worked best for myself is to tape the mitered edges. For assembly, I like to use tape on my edges to hold the joints together. By using the tape, it allows me to fold the end piece exactly into place. Before completing the fold, you want to add a little bit of glue along the joint, and you can spread this around with a silicone brush, which we'll include a link for in the description below. Once you have the three pieces assembled together, you can just check to make sure that the miters look okay. I ended up having to use a pin nail on the bottom just to hold everything in place, but other than that, the tape did its job. Once you have the three sides assembled, you can add the fourth and final piece on using the same method. While your glue is setting on the table legs, you can start work on your table base. I use my Kreg 720 pocket jig to drill all my pocket holes on the bottom side of the base of the table. I probably went a little bit overkill with how many pocket holes I added, but my thought was that kids were going to be climbing and playing on this, so I wanted to make it extra secure, but you could probably reduce this almost by half. With all your pocket holes complete, you can take the tabletop, or base as I was calling it previously, and set it into place. I used an 1.5 inch spacer blocks for my gap, as I found that was a nice setting for the recess of the tabletop versus the top of the table. To attach the tabletop, to the legs or the side panels, what I did was put the table upside down. I put my 1.5-inch spacer blocks on the inside so my tabletop could sit on those, and then I added a little bit of glue to the tabletop, and I slid the tabletop in place, and I used pocket hole screws to secure the top to the side legs. I let the table sit overnight so that all the glue could dry. Once I was happy that everything was dry and secured, I looked over the whole table and filled any gaps with wood filler. Once the wood filler dried, I gave the table a final sand to make sure everything looked good and was ready for stain and varnish. We decided just to go with a polyacrylic varnish. We like this finish because it doesn't yellow and really enhances the natural wood grain. The table will fit 6 Lego 10x10 base plates, and we'll include a link in the description below for those. Once the varnish dries, your table is ready to be put to use.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you are planning to build a Lego table, we would love to see, or if you have other things that you'd like to see us build or other suggestions for build videos, we would love to do those too. So leave those in the comment and let us know.
Yeah, this was a super fun project to build. I mean, it's nice to take a bit of a different path from the room renos and the other, like this was a fun project, and it's nice to get in the garage to do these simple ones every once in a while. So we really enjoyed building it, and we hope you guys enjoyed watching along.
So if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up, let us know in the comments, and as always, hit the bell so you can be notified of more great DIY and home renovation videos. Thanks for watching.